Hold on a second. Got it. Thanks everyone for joining us today. This is our latest UAE-Israel Business Council Roundtable, and the topic today is relocation to an Abraham Accords country, which will naturally, in our case, be focused mainly on relocation to the United Arab Emirates, where an increasing number of Israelis have decided to make their homes. I'm Dorian Barak, co-founder and president of the UAE-Israel Business Council, and I'm really delighted to be with you this afternoon. Can everyone hear me and see me okay? If no, just raise your hands and I'll see. Good, I see Dr. Simon has indicated. So before we begin, just a few administrative items. If you have a question, please raise your hand in the Zoom chat function. If you haven't signed up for the UAE-Israel Business Council, which is the largest UAE-Israel organization with over 5,000 members of our community, please click the link in the chat box, which I hope Salome will post. It's uaeisraelbusiness.com. Please do not unmute yourselves and simply begin to talk. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us separately through our website if you wish. With that, let's begin. With us today are four very distinguished and interesting speakers, and I hope we're going to have an open and very informative discussion this afternoon. Let me begin by introducing the speakers. The first, Sébastien Besson, is CEO and partner of In Touch Relocations, which is really the premier relocation service operating in the UAE and in the greater Middle East and Africa. Sébastien's experience in managing operations spans over 20 years. He's been in the Emirates for 14 years. An expat himself since the age of 3, Sébastien has lived in the USA, Thailand, India, the UAE, Libya, Argentina, and of course, France. Very, very interesting life. And he spent over 20 years in the greater Middle East region. He lives in Dubai with his wife and son. Sébastien, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dorian.
Our second speaker is the ecosystem director of the UAE Israel Tech Zone, Jonathan Steingeiser, a longtime Dubai resident, actually a friend, and currently head of product design at Omnipresent. Yoni is a trilingual, this is how he defines himself, trilingual third culture kid who was born on a Brazilian kibbutz in the Negev desert of Israel. He's both Australian and Israeli in addition to being Brazilian. He's based in Dubai. And he really is a pillar of the Jewish community and of the former Israeli community in Dubai. And he has a lot of experience in the retail, tech, nonprofit, mining, and even education sector. So it's a privilege to have Yoni with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Our third speaker is Ayelet Mamoshai. She's co-founder and director of Benefit Business Solutions and author of Relocation, Darling, Relocation. I'm going to ask Ayelet to say that herself in just a minute. Ayelet is a businesswoman, a journalist, a PhD researcher, and she moved from Gibraltar from Israel, and really has lived the experience of relocation herself. Her really award-winning book, Relocation, Darling, Relocation, is a realistic and humorous and also emotional novel about the challenges and opportunities of moving around, of being an expat. And she advises people on relocation really across the world with a focus on Israelis who are moving abroad. And finally, Dr. Saima Rana, a real pleasure to have you here. Saima is the CEO of GEMS World Academy, which many of you may know, it's the most prolific and leading school system in the UAE. She has extensive experience in international education. She's devoted really her entire career to improving education standards of inner city schools, running schools herself. Before joining GEMS, she was principal of the Westminster Academy in London. And she specializes in secondary school education policy, ICT, globalization, the digital economy, and is a member of a pretty large number of very prestigious boards, including the International Baccalaureate Schools and Colleges Association, the Duke of York Inspiring Digital Enterprise Award, the Mosaic Community Trust, University College School, and many others. Dr. Saima, thank you so much for joining us on behalf of GEMS. I'm sure this is going to be a very interesting discussion for everyone, and I hope you'll all find it useful as well as you plan your move, if you're planning to move to the UAE. Let's actually begin with Yoni, Jonathan. Yoni, you're a longtime Dubai resident, an Australian and an Israeli, a pillar of the Jewish expat community in the UAE. In fact, many would say you're the first and most friendly face they initially meet when they move here from Israel, or they move to the UAE from Israel. Can you share what it's like to arrive in the UAE? What's the infrastructure and the environment like for an expat? How easy is it to find a job, get a work permit, and really what awaits new arrivals?
Yeah, I do love the UAE and love living here. I think one of the most fascinating things about living here is the rate of change. I think you know, it's easy to come from other parts of the world and look at you know, we are in an emerging market, and the you know, the positives and negatives that entails. But I moved to Abu Dhabi in December 2012, and I didn't know a single Jewish person. I celebrated my first festival, Hanukkah, with my cat. My wife hadn't arrived yet. And very quickly, I think from 2013, found a Jewish community. I mean, in terms of work, and I work at a company called Omnipresent, which is about hiring anyone, anywhere. One of the advantages of a place like Dubai is that the infrastructure is only improving and getting better. So comparing, you know, Abu Dhabi from those days to move to Australia and then back to Dubai today, and even now being in this industry of hiring globally, one of the advantages is the digitization of Dubai. So in terms of your visa, your work permits, your health insurance, etc. Yes, there are still, you know, manual processes like every other country, but what is incredible is seeing, as I was saying, the speed and the rate of change, at how that's improving, how quickly that's improving, and how much easier it is to hire, as well as to move here and relocate. I think that kind of covers it at a high level. I mean, and in terms of the Jewish community, just quickly, but I'm sure we'll get into it. Again, the days have changed when you know, we were praying in a house that was unknown, without a website, without a which was special. I don't want to take away from those days. It was very unique and special. It was not something on Instagram or on social media. But today, both in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the community is flourishing. It's not based on any statistics, but it's probably one of the fastest growing communities. And there is choice and variety, regardless what sect or area of Judaism you're in. And also we are mixing, and we have local organizations that I'm very fortunate to be a part of, and we mix with locals as well as regionals and other Abrahamic Accord countries. And some of those I have met through Dorian and the UAE Israel Business Council, as well as other friendships formed along the way. So I think it's definitely an exciting time. We're in a, you know, living in the time of true miracles, where you don't have to hide your identity. I used to say to people, I'm Australian, and be very cautious with where I said where I was from. Obviously, I didn't hide it, but it would be selective. But now I'm very proud to have the state and the protection to say I'm Jewish, I'm Israeli, and only find more fascination. I think a lot of the you know, biases we have are in our own mindsets, as opposed to what's we really find in society.
Well, you'll always be Australian for me. That's any comfort. Sebastian, help us think through how a prospective expat begins for a move to Dubai in particular, or the UAE generally, goes about finding a job. Is it a challenging process? Are there limitations? Is it a question of just finding a job and moving there? Is it something they need to prepare for well in advance? What is the usual process that you engage in when someone approaches you and says, I'm interested in moving to the country?
Thank you, Dorian. It depends. It will depend which stage and what is your situation, I would say. Are you an individual coming to Dubai with, you know, moving yourself, or is it a corporation? Are we talking about a mobility department, and that some of you might be moving people to Dubai? So that's two different situations. Overall, I think it's a process of doing a bit of homework and trying to understand the country from far away. As Yoni was saying, the country has changed a lot. I've been here on and off for the last 30 years. The most changes I've seen in the country has been in the last 15 years, since 2005. And as we go along, you see more changes, and it's not only changes in terms of building and skyscraper, but it's changes in cultural changes, and the one that Yoni just described is one of them. It's a major change in the UAE over the last few years. So then someone will have to do a bit of homework, trying to understand what is a country about. This is what we can do. A lot of our clients actually try to do orientation up front. So what they do is, at the time of recruiting an employee, they would bring them, and then would be doing a half-day orientation. So we can help them to understand lifestyle. We can help them to understand cost of living, which is very important here as well. We can help them to understand the schooling market, that I'm sure we're going to talk more in details in a bit. They can understand housing. So many things have to be looked upon before moving here. And once again, the approach depends if you're an individual or if you're being moved by your company. We worked a lot with mobility department, HR people. Most of the move we assist with are done by corporations, and small or large ones. So it can be a small team we're helping to move here. It could be a large team, but definitely looking at all these aspects as a first step. And then the next step will come along, and being on your own or being working with a relocation company like us, the steps will be always the same one. With the most important one, the day you know you will be moving here, the first thing to look at is schooling, because there's a lot of choice, but there's a lot of demand as well, especially over the last, I would say the last 12 to 18 months, we have seen an increase of high influx of people in Dubai and the UAE due to the COVID-19 situation being quite safe here, and many other reasons. And that has impacted, of course, the ability of housing and schooling. So these are the two elements someone would have to look into and start the process right away to make sure that you can find the right spot for your kid in the school you want.
So before we get to schooling, which is obviously one of the most important considerations for a family moving to the UAE, I just want to clarify for the listeners who don't know, you really have many options in how to move to the Emirates. A fairly standard one is, you get a job and people will sort out a work permit for you, and your employer may call In Touch, Sebastian's people, and deal with your move. Many others arrive in Dubai as tourists, or in Abu Dhabi as tourists. They set up their own company and they issue themselves a work permit, which is not an uncommon way of doing it as well. Unlike most countries, the UAE is very open to this, to people coming, setting up a company, initially employing themselves, and then those people look for another job locally. But of course, schooling and housing tend to be and medical care tend to be the first three things that someone is concerned about other than a job. Dr. Raima, you run the premier school district or the school association in the country, GEMS, which seems to be the most prolific from my perspective, a large number of schools. Could you share with us a little bit about the network, the company, how it works, what the options are that are available, and how people can get more information?
Of course. Hi, thank you so much for having me here today. So GEMS Education is a company, it's the oldest company in terms of schooling and education in the United Arab Emirates. We've been, as a company, based in this area, this region, for over 50 years now. And we also have schools in Qatar, Egypt, etc., and London in the States. So, but Dubai is really home. United Arab Emirates is really home for our founding family, the Varki family. And so we are very much a family-orientated business. The communities that we work with and for, they very much know us and trust us as a name that is, it's a household name. So we're very proud of being GEMS Education. We have a huge, broad offer in terms of education. We have American schools, we have British schools, we have Indian schools, we have national schools, and of course we have the very gold standard of education, the international baccalaureate schools as well. And we have a price point for absolutely every child, every family, and true to the sort of aims of our founder, which is to put a really excellent, high standard, quality education in the hands of every single child. We make sure that we provide for every single child, regardless of what the price point is in terms of fee. So as a school, we have lots of different types of school. We have the Premium Plus schools, and I'm very proud to be the principal and CEO of GEMS World Academy, which is our most expensive school, but it's also a high performance school, and it's an international baccalaureate all through school. And we also have schools that are, if you like, mid-market, premium schools, and then of course the low-cost schools, if those are needed as well. And we do very much have a great standing in our community across our competitor schools as well. People do know GEMS and they understand GEMS very well. One of the things that we're very good at is looking after children that are expat children, because of course approximately 95% of our children are from expat communities. And the lovely thing about all of our schools is, in particular the premium sector, is very much that we have nationalities like you wouldn't believe. Some of our schools have over 105 nationalities. The school I'm in has 92 different nationalities. And, you know, as I said earlier to you before we started, that I come from London, where there's a real mix of communities and people from lots of different places. But I've never seen such an amazing mix of minority groups. So if you like GEMS World Academy, let's take that for example, every nationality is a minority. And what that does is for our children, it just makes them all feel special, because they're all different. So every nationality, whether it's Mongolian, Israeli, Palestinian, Ukrainian, Russian, I'm saying all of those countries first, Indian, Pakistani, British, American, French, they're all 1 or 2%, and just everybody gets on so well, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful place to be. And I would agree with Jonathan that you know, it's a beautiful place to be. It's such a safe place to be, and things are changing so fast. Where once perhaps people would not necessarily want to disclose where they were from, today it just doesn't feel like that. So again, at GEMS World Academy, we have Israeli children, we have Israeli families, and about 2 weeks ago we had our International Day, and it was the first time that we had our Israeli flag with our Israeli parents, as well as all the other flags that we have at the academy, you know, walking around the track and being proud to be who you were and where you were from. So we very much look after not just the academic success through the American, British, IB national curriculums, but we also look after the mental health, well-being, moral education of all the children. So it's a great place to be, GEMS Education, and it is one that's been around for a very long time. So it's experienced, has a reputation, people trust it. Our founder is very much involved in our schools and wants to know all of our children are happy. So that's the sort of portfolio that we have.
Excellent. Could I ask, just for communications purposes, if your colleague, Mr. Fu, who's on the call
Yes.
today, he could just post in the chat information about where someone can oh, I see he's just done it, where we can get more information about GEMS Education and the GEMS World Academy. And I would ask you, Sebastian, to do the same when you have a moment. Let me turn now to Ayelet. Ayelet, as someone who's examined relocation from a cultural, psychological, and also very practical perspective, could you share with us some of your key insights from your book, Relocation, Darling Relocation? And if you could say relocation, darling relocation in your accent, we'd really, we'd enjoy hearing it.
To be honest with you, my book, the idea of this book actually started when I met so many Israelis from all around the world that gave me so many ideas and told me their own story. And when I actually realized that there is something in common for all of us, we created a special language, which means that if you didn't do relocation in your life, you're not really going to understand what I'm having in my life at the moment, because I think we all, and it doesn't matter if you're Israeli, if you're Indian, if you're Muslim, if you're whatever, you always miss your country, you always miss the products. In our case, for the Jewish people, we miss our Friday night, we miss our Jewish feast. So I think all of us, we really suffer from the same things. We miss our friends, the family. And, you know, I always say to all my clients, I have connection in over 50 countries around the world, and I give services to really everybody and not just Israeli. But I always said it to everybody that to do a relocation, it's a trauma. And it's not an easy thing to do. But once you do it, you need to use people like Sebastian, like Jonathan, like Dr. Saima, and other experts that will help you to do it easily, because I did relocation 3 times in my life and nobody helped me, to be honest with you, nobody. So I had to really be in a very, very deep water, and I need to know to learn how to swim. And that wasn't easy at all, but At the end of the day, if you really want to do something about it, you can. And if you want to make a nice lemonade from these lemons that you are receiving, that is possible as well. One of the things that I always suggest to everybody is sometimes when you have an offer, a job offer, I think recently it's not happening very often, but one of the things that we really need to be careful and to look after is the partners. I don't know if you know, but 70% from the relocation that fail is because of the partner. If the partner is not happy, it means that the whole family is going back to the place that they came from. So I think, and I really suggest to everybody and all the big companies and the bosses that wants to send their employees, if they want good result in the company, you have to make sure that your partner is really, the partner of the employee is very happy, and the employee, of course, is happy, and the kids as well. So to send them, I think, to such a school like Dr. Saima just mentioned, I think it's part of it, because if they're happy in the system, they would like to stay and they will feel part of it. So if you're celebrating with the flag of Israel and other flags, I think it's give you the feeling that you are part of something big. And I think personally, and I've been in Dubai, I think we just did an history, and just to see all amazing people that I've met there in the Jewish community as well. And I even wrote about it, a beautiful article about the Jewish community that's really blooming now at the moment in Dubai. It's just amazing to see it. Another thing is that I want to mention is not really always to stick to the Israeli. If you're Israeli or you're Jewish, don't stick to Israelis and Jewish all the time. Be open to everybody. And I know in Dubai and other places, they're amazing people, and you just need to explore the authentic people and the authentic place. And apart from everything is to be a good ambassador to your own country. I think it is something very, very important. You don't have to be very active and do it as I did, because I actually went to the extreme, and I'm the chairwoman of the Gibraltar Israel Chamber of Commerce for the last 7 years, and we're doing a lot of things between Gibraltar and Israel. But what you really need is to behave and to be good and to really represent your own country, because at the end of the day, if you're going to a foreign country, you have to respect the country that welcome you and host you, and please remember where you're coming from, just to bring a good name to your own country. So that is really like a brief for your question, and if you have any other question, I would be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Ayelet. Sebastian, for those listeners who are not aware, generally when someone relocates to the UAE, is it easy to bring family members, a spouse, your children, or the permits that are given, the work permits, are they specific only to an individual?
Thank you, Dorian. Yeah, so just as a summary, because I don't think I introduced what we do so people can understand a bit more. So as a relocation company, we help individuals or individuals working for large or small corporation to relocate to the UAE and to Middle East, actually, and Africa. So we can help with all that, and it's quite interesting to hear Ayelet talking about the relocation process and the family as well, because a lot of it is the soft aspect of what we do. So we do the technical aspect. We're going to help with immigration, visa, work permits, finding a home, helping with the school. But our consultant will take the newcomers into the city. We'll be able to share with them a day-to-day experience and make them more at ease, especially the partner. As Ayelet was saying, this is usually the one thing which is very, very important, because the partners might feel left on the side. The employee goes to work, partner stays at home and doesn't understand. So we're not here to change the reality, but we're here to focus and then share with them the positive. An example, for instance, one of the consultants could be with someone in a car and talking about, yes, the summer, you just arrived in July, it's 52 degrees outside. But you know what? Yes, it is hot, but you can do these activities. I have been living here, me as a consultant, helping you for 15 years, and my kids are happy in the summer. We can do many things. Here are the way you can work, and so this is the soft aspect of the relocation is very important. I fully agree, and this is where usually a lot of companies are failing. To go back to your question, Dorian, yes, the UAE is amazing in the sense that you have many options. So you mentioned earlier, scenario one, the company gets you a work permit. The only requirement is to have a quota, to have a position matching your job, and you get a visa. And it's a 2 or 3 year visa, depending on where it is based from. In that case, as soon as you get your lease, you get a property, you get your lease attested, and then you become the sponsor of your whole family. So then I can bring my whole family. I become a sponsor of my dependents. It's very easy again, simple process. The only key element is to come with attested document and certificate. The one matching my job, my marriage certificate to bring my spouse, and my the birth certificate to bring our kids. Very simple. They need to be attested back home.
Sorry to I just want to add a quick little anecdote. This was very painful, not the first time, but also the second, because I was so excited about my new job when I returned to Dubai. I forgot about my daughters, and their birth certificate needs to be attested in Australia by the UAE embassy, which is on the opposite side of Australia. And if you have to do that when you're already here, which I had to do, you need to, at the time it was pre-COVID, so you can do border runs, but it's very painful to go to Oman and do multiple border runs with a screaming 4-year-old and an amazing 6-year-old. Not a lot of fun. So take Sebastian's advice, do that at a station of your university degree or whatever, birth certificates, before, not after. It can be done after, but it can be painful too. Sorry, keep going.
Thank you, Yannick. Thank you. No, that's indeed important. So it has to be attested in the country of origin of the document. So if you've been studied in the UK, but you are from Australia, you will need the UAE embassy in the UK to attest your document. Now we have contact of companies doing that worldwide. It's quite expensive, but they can do it for you. And then once it's here, it will be attested by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, MOFA. So that's step one. It's easy to get you a visa and then automatically get your family visa. The beauty of it, if you compare it to any country in the world, and especially, for example, I used to live in the US. So as a spouse, you cannot get a work permit easily. You need to have an H3 and a different visa, which is very complicated. Here, as a spouse, automatically, as soon as you get a job, you can keep your partner visa. You just need to get a labor card from your employer. So any spouse can work here as well, which is a very important element for many families, because the partner wants to continue their career, they want to have a job, and this is very easy to do here. The second way to do it, you can form your own company. It's quite simple to form a company where you are the owner of the company, and then you have setups in different free zones where you can get as well a resident visa or 2 or 3. There is a cost to it, but then that allows you to be living in the country on a resident visa. Once again, you will need a salary certificate, and you need a lease attested to sponsor your family. And then the UAE were very reactive to what happened over the last few years, especially with COVID. They created a new visa called a remote worker visa or freelancer. But remote worker visa is pretty much you come in the country, and for about $200, you get a 1-year visa. You have some requirements. You have to show that you have health insurance, you have a salary or an income sufficient, but that's completely independent visa, valid for 1 year, giving you the same benefits. And then finally, there is something new as well, which is called the golden visa, which is a 10-year, it's almost like a green card system. You are independent from any employer. You can get it if you're invited, if you know someone, but you can apply as well, depending on your situation, investor, skills, special fields. And then you get a 10-year visa for you and your family, independent of any employer, and then you can then find a job or do your own business. So there are many options. It is quite flexible in terms of immigration.
Excellent. And I see I got a personal message here on the chat. Israel is very difficult to get to come to as an expat. You really need to find a job first, and your employer needs to demonstrate that you have a special skill set that requires you to be there. It's like some European countries in that respect. It's certainly not nearly as open as the UAE, where the process is quite straightforward. Going back to what Sebastian said, so basically you can be sponsored essentially for your visa by your employer, or you can set up your own company and essentially sponsor yourself, your family members, your friends, whomever you want. Those are the general ways it's done. Yoni, let me go back to you for just a moment. What is the process if you come to the UAE in one position, you want to switch positions? Is it a fairly easy process to switch a visa from one employer to another?
I'm experiencing that as we speak. I think it's all about managing expectations. I think that the challenge is if you don't have children, for example, it's a lot easier because, or even other dependents, right? So it really depends on your situation. My wife, for example, works at King's College London Hospital. She's got her own visa and she is not reliant on my sponsorship. So she didn't have to go through any change. She's got her visa, her Emirates ID, that's fine. My daughters had to be canceled before they could then move on to the new visa. And because I needed to travel for my new job to London for a week, it complicated the situation a little bit. However, if your expectations are, you understand it'll take something like a month in terms of the cancellation, then getting your visa, and then getting like your kids onto that new visa, then that's okay. It is challenging if you do have to travel, but there are, as Sebastian I'm sure will tell you, and I'm privileged, though, I guess, in a way that I'm able to say I do need to travel. So there's a VIP service, which means that the process can be shortcut. I think this is something also unique to the UAE, in that any service you need, whether you're relocating or you already live here, in most countries requires you to have a presence, whether it's buying a car or your driver's license or whatever. In the UAE, you have a lot of self-service, let's call it, where you can pretty much pay for almost anything. There are some things that you require to be there, but you can give your license, driver's license, or your Emirates ID to someone to then stand in a line somewhere for you and take care of something at a relatively minimal cost, if you think about it, compared. And this luxury you don't have in pretty much anywhere in the world, as far as I'm aware. I'm sure
Not
there's
in Gibraltar, for sure. Not in Gibraltar. In Gibraltar, you have to have.
in Israel, I know even renting a car is extremely painful, never mind buying a car. But I think it was a little bit challenging because I am looking at traveling in both times. So it was a bit frustrating. Health insurance is also a little bit tricky to cancel the company that you're on and then move on to the new one. There is a grace period from your old company, but you don't want to be without health insurance because you don't have, I don't know, it's like Medicare, like in Australia, for example, like public health at the same, relatively the same standard as private health. But again, in the larger scheme of things, I think if you're patient and you're aware of the process and you accept the process, you don't try to bypass it, it's pretty good. Anything I've missed, Sebastian? I'm living this, so I'm pretty included.
Sorry, I was just going to come in there if I can, Dorian. Is that okay? As an employer myself, I agree with everything Jonathan said. It does take about a month. And I think my advice would just be very careful with your contract and make sure you know when and where you can leave and if there are any penalties. But it's very straightforward with what I've seen. And I would agree, it takes about a month. And as long as you've managed your expectations and your new employer's expectations and your current employer's expectations, it's very straightforward. And it really, I haven't seen any issues with it. But you do have to know what the parameters are that you're working within, and that will all be laid out very nicely in your contract, I'm sure.
I have another question for Dr. Simon. Before I do so, let me just remind everyone, if you want to reach Sebastian, Google or just go to the website of intouchrelocations.com. That's INTOUCH relocations.com. And for GEMS, GEMSeducation.com, GEMSeducation.com. Dr. Simon, just a question for you about your new arrivals, the children who arrive from all over the world. Do you have acculturation programs, or are they kind of just, thrown into the jungle as it would be of a new experience? Is there a special treatment afforded to the students who come and join the GEM schools?
Yes, I must correct you. It's thrown in the desert, not jungle. But anyway, yes, well, we don't have a culturalization program. No, what we do have is, because we are so aware of the communities that we serve being expat. So we have new children coming in all the time. It's not something at the start of September, they all come in at the end of a term or beginning of a term. They come in whenever they want, and we're very, very accepting of all children from all countries across all of our schools. What we do have is we have a transition piece that we do with our children. And what that means is we buddy them up with somebody who can be in their grade or in their class, who can play with them, so they're never alone. What we want is that first day, that experience is one that's really, really lovely for the children, so that they're with a group of friends, they know exactly where to go, they're not lost when they're looking for the bathrooms or their lockers and so on. But that almost starts when they come in for a tour of the school. So we make sure that the family and the children feel incredibly comfortable. And I agree with Sebastian, what he said about children being happy, you know, the school being the right fit for the children as well. And I think a lot of parents will come in and tour the school for an hour and a half, sit with the teachers, speak to the senior leadership team and the principal, of course. And that's where we really create those relationships. So children are not left on their own at any point within the first 2 weeks. And in my school, for example, I'll meet them at the start of the day, I'll meet the family, I'll of course meet them at the tour, and then I'll meet them on their first day, first thing in the morning, make sure they're okay, because they are very anxious. Every child's very anxious when they're starting a new school. And we make sure they've got really lovely people with them, which is easy in our schools because they're all lovely. And then at the end of the day, they'll pop into my office and just let me know how they got on, was everything okay? But again, as a principal, I'll go and just have a quick look how they're settled in the classroom. Are they okay? Are there any issues? We do get some parents who will loiter around the premises just waiting for something to go wrong, and we're saying it's okay, it's fine, because I mean this is their most precious thing and they've just come into the country and they want the kids into school. So we do have a really lovely transition period of about 2 weeks for them, where we're really monitoring and checking everything, calling parents, is everything okay? Most of our principals, I certainly do share my personal mobile with my parents, just in case if there's anything wrong, they're anxious, they can just drop me a WhatsApp and I can go and check on the kids. Some parents will say, can you take a picture? If I say they're happy, no, can you take a picture and prove to me that they're happy? So I'll take a quick picture of them playing or being happy. But I think also that the really important thing about GEM schools is that we have created a culture with our expat communities and with our children, that it really is a family. It's not a child coming to a school. And I've heard this before from the panelists, you know, Dubai is so different. It's a hub with so many different people from so many different walks of life, from so many different backgrounds. And I loved what Ailette, if I've said that correctly, said about don't forget who you are. So we make sure that our children, through our offer, know that you are here, and it's not about being an expat, but you are here today, but don't ever forget or let go of who you are. You belong in our community and with us as a family. And so that gives them a certain type of confidence, if you like, to be able to just sort of ease into the schools that we have. And one of the ways, if I can give an example, that we do this with our language program, for example, we believe at GEMS World Academy that language is not merely about the spoken language. It's about heritage, it's about culture, it's about food, it's about spices, it's about festivals and celebrations, it's about grandparents. You know, most of our families are here, mum, dad and children, no uncles, no aunts, no grandparents. So that connectivity through language for our children is more important than I've ever known in any other school. So we at GEMS World Academy have a language program. We have 16 languages, and I'm super proud and excited, and I don't think a better place to be able to share this, that we have our first Hebrew language at the moment as well for our Hebrew children, because now we have Jewish, Israeli children, and they want to learn Hebrew. So we've endorsed that now, and it's all integrated in the curriculum. So it's not an add-on as an extracurricular language where, you know, children feel, well, I have to stay after school now to learn my mother tongue. No, your mother tongue is equally important, and therefore we've really nicely embedded it into our curriculum, and you will be taught this language. And again, it gives that connectivity to the children, that there is something that makes them feel that this is home, this is okay, because suddenly your teachers, your principal, your heads of department become your family, because that this is your constant now every day. And our environment is one that really celebrates their nationality. So for example, at GEMS World Academy, we have the flags of all the nations that come to the school, and you see the little ones. So I'm at an all-through school, so I have 3-year-olds and 18-year-olds, but the little ones will come in, 5-year-olds, and say, oh, there's a flag of my country. And it means that this is home, and it might be home for 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, it doesn't matter, but this is home, and it's really important. And we extend the same privileges to our parent community. Again, you know, there are lots of, and I liked what I heard earlier about spouses and what happens with them. You know, we know that when we are enrolling children, we're not just enrolling the child, we're enrolling a family. You are becoming part of the GEMS education family. So we have parent events, we group parents with their community. So we have the Italian mothers, if you like. That sounds quite scary, but you know, we have the Italian mothers group, we have the French mothers group, we have the, you know, British mothers group, and the Dutch mothers group, who I would say stay away from, but anyway. So we have these groups of mothers who will, you know, induct the new parent in and say, look, this is where we can go for shopping if you need special things, and this is where you'll get your Lebanese ingredients. And so that whole piece it's not a relocation at all, but it's genuinely saying you are now part of our family, and we will look after you, and we will make sure that all those little things that we don't think about when we're in our home countries, where do I go to shop, where do I buy, you know, a certain items of clothing, we will help you. So we have those lists available for you. We have a phenomenal parent relation executive team who is completely committed to looking after our parent community. These are executives who are constantly talking to the parents and making sure they feel very much at home, whilst we make sure that the children feel very much at home.
Simon,
Sorry,
I just want to add something, Dorian, sorry.
Sure, please.
You know, we can be a relocation expert, me, Jonathan, and Sebastian, but you should understand what an amazing mission you have, because at the end of the day, the kids going to remember you. They're not going to remember us. You know, we help you on the way, definitely, to make the relocation smooth and nice. But your mission, it's so important. I actually just remember while you've been talking, when we came here, my son was 4 years old, and the little one was 1 year old, and the third one, she was born here. So she is like a pure Gibraltarian. But I just want to say that I remember my son didn't know how to say, just thank you. That's what he knew in English. And Isaac's sister, Isaac is here now, she actually been with him the whole time. And the only words that he used to say all the time, מחשב, 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 which is computer, computer, computer. And you know, the fact that she'd been next to him the whole time and took him hand by hand and helped him with everything, it's made the whole situation for him much, much easier. And I think it's really affected at the end of the day on the dad and the mom, because as you said at the beginning, we are sending the most important thing in our life to school every single day, and we want them back safe and happy. And the fact that you have the right people to do so, it's just really, really amazing. And another thing that I want to mention is 7 years ago, I actually established the Relocation Day, which we are doing good deeds for Israel from 40 different countries around the world by amazing Israeli. And if your school wants to take part of it, we are really, you are more than welcome to speak to me later, and we'll take you on board. And obviously we'll do a lot of marketing to your own school, and to really make sure that everybody knows about your school, all the Israeli community around the world, definitely.
Yeah, bless you. Thank you so much. And if I can just add to that, look, you know, you are giving us your most precious item of human being that you have. And I understand that. But, you know, you have to understand we are educationalists, and exactly what you've said, these precious people are my precious people when they come to my school. And you may be worried, but I will be equally worried to make sure they're settled and they're looked after. So our personalized approach is super important to us. You know, we say at GEMS World Academy that our promise to our parents is that we will keep your children safe, secure, and successful. And the safety is all about no bullying, no discrimination, no racism, no nasty behavior, no one saying, I don't want to sit next to you, I don't want to be friends with you. None of that will happen. And if it does, because it is school and children are children, they are little and they do make mistakes, and it's our job to guide them to not, we will rapidly step in and make sure that that is removed, that behavior is removed. We want to make sure children are secure, and security is not just about making sure we have the best sort of security, which we do, but it's about making sure that children come into school and they feel that this is my school. I can hip, sing, do cartwheels, ask my head teacher that I need a cookie because I feel I need a sugar rush, or whatever it is. You know, it's really important they feel secure in their environment. And of course, success is super important. We are the highest performing school in GEMS at GEMS World Academy, but our results speak for themselves. without success, those doors will not open when one day maybe you need to leave Dubai and go somewhere else. We need that easy transition into other schools as well. So we're very much aware that we don't just serve children. We are serving an expat community, but these expat community children are quite vulnerable when they first come in. But within weeks, within days, they've made friends and they, walking around the school as if they own the school. And that's what we want for our children. And we very much look after them. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of, children are so vulnerable when we are moving countries. And I think what you said earlier about as an expat, you do need help and you do need support. I'm an expat and I've relocated recently. I'm very lucky that I've come into GEMS Education, a beautiful family. People really look after you. But it comes from the core philosophy of our founder, which is parents and the children are the most important. Teachers, principals, everybody else is important, but those two areas are so important. We've got to look after them. And I think that transition piece is so important for us. And we make sure we put a lot of effort into that and a lot of resource into that.
I just wanted to add, and apologies, my children are not at a GEMS school, but I think there's a lot of similarities from a parent perspective. I have gone through a very interesting stage. And the last time I lived here, when you do change or things don't work out in your employment, you naturally fall back on either going home or you're continuing your expat, wandering Jewish, Muslim, or Christian person life. But we returned with a longer term plan, my wife and I did transition work, and we got to that 2-year itch that my wife and I call, because we've moved every 2 years for the last decade, which is a bit crazy. Now that we have children, we obviously think about it differently. And what has kept us in Dubai is definitely the school. So the community at the school, how much, not just our daughters, but we really feel a part of the community, is what anchored us to Dubai. So while there was the itch to, hey, maybe go somewhere else, we both transitioned work. My wife did too. She worked at a private clinic. Now she's very happy at a great London institution, King's College, London Hospital. And it was the school, again, that gave us that anchor, which I guess as expats in the past, as singles or couples or married, whatever, we didn't have. So, and I know our school isn't unique to that. We obviously, we love the school where my daughter is at. I don't want to say it. I feel bad. There's so much GEMS going on. But if anyone wants more details, and again, I mean, I have friends in a lot of GEMS schools, and I think a lot of the great schools, as many of them, do create that environment. So I think as parents, you probably settle when your kids are settled, and then you feel better. I guess it's an easier transition to move here.
Yeah, I think I would agree. So I was an inspector before I became the head of GEMS World Academy. When I would inspect schools here in Dubai. I would agree with everything you've said. Parents are spoilt for choice here in the United Arab Emirates. Our schools are fantastic. All schools across the board are very, very good schools, and it's not. We are very lucky, and a lot of people will move to this region because of the schooling and the education, not necessarily because you get the sort of fees paid, but sometimes yes, but also the schooling is very, very good. I would agree with everything you've said. And I think we are very lucky that we've got some great educationists working in this region. Of course, GEMS Education has the best. And Jonathan, personally, I'd like you to I would like to host a visit for you at GEMS World Academy. Thank you so much.
Open day, Jonathan, open day.
Before we come to a conclusion, because we always try to keep these less than an hour, I think it's the easiest way to do things. Let me just remind people, www.benefitgibraltar.com for Ayelet. Sebastian at intouchrelocations.com. And of course, Dr. Simon and our team at gemseducation.com. Let me just ask if any of you have concluding remarks you want to make, and let me also open it up to the audience if anybody wants to ask a specific question. Mike Hopainu, I see has raised his hand. Mike, please go ahead.
Well, you kind of close, with my last name, but I'm not going to challenge you to that. Quick question. First of all, I'm Romanian, Israeli, American, I lived in the 3 countries. I obviously speak the 3 languages. And I guess I'm following Yoni's steps, right, with 3 languages and moving from place to place. And I'm, I guess, getting ready to go to the 4th country, which is the UAE, Dubai. And as you know, many times when these relocations happen, they happen because one of the family members gets a job. And in that case, it's not me, it's through my wife. So my wife is the one getting a job in the UAE. And obviously there's great support here. And by the way, congrats on this talk, because it's very useful. So yeah, we talked about relocation, we talked about schools. And by the way, talking about schools, I was in Dubai 2 weeks ago doing a school tour. I saw a bunch of schools, by the way, Simon Gems as well. So very nice on that. So, and what options do we have? Obviously to find jobs, of course, we want to work, we don't want to stay home, right? And how can we actually use our, Hebrew knowledge now in Dubai? Are there any, are you aware of any, companies not looking for Israelis, but doing executive search for these kind of people? Because that's important as well when you, again, go to a different country. And I don't want to be one of those 70% that is, as Ayelet said, failing, unhappy, and then the family gets home. So do you know of any support on that end with the spouses, and again, related to Israel, related to the to know in Hebrew, which I guess that could be an advantage in this market?
May I make a suggestion just in the interest of time? And Yoni, if it's okay with you, would you mind sharing your contact, your email in a direct message?
I'll put on chat, right?
Mike, you can put your email, but Ayelet, please go ahead.
Before everybody, actually, the experts of Dubai will answer to you. I actually want to say to you a few things. First of all, behind every a successful woman, there is a man. And your wife needs the support. And I think this is really, really important, that you will stand by her and give her all the support that she needs in that critical moment, because she needs you to be with the kids. She's very busy with meetings and things like that. So I think this is really important. And another thing that I want to tell you, even though it was very, very sad for 2 years that we had COVID, but recently we actually start to say, thank you, COVID, that you've been here. You actually taught us a good lesson. Because I'll tell you what's happened. Within the COVID, there is a lot of rules at the workplace that really, really change, which means that you can actually still do your job online, on Zoom, and nobody will complain and say, oh, he's coming too late to work, he didn't pass his card or whatever. So it's actually changed the whole world. And I think you should use this moment and COVID-19 situation for your own good and for your new job. And now I will give the opportunity for the rest of the experts to answer, but it was important for me to mention these two topics, okay?
If Yoni, if you could direct message him, that would be very, very helpful. We're just very limited in time.
Yeah, I mean, super quickly,
ahead,
there are recruiters, and there's, like anywhere in the world, expert recruiters in certain areas, depending on your field of expertise. And they know the market very well. The market is very hot right now, not just Dubai. There's a global hiring wave, and I'm happy to take it offline. I've added my LinkedIn, but otherwise I can add my email as well, and connect you depending on your area of expertise. But I'm sure there are other recruiters that I'm not aware of that the panel might know. I don't know, Sebastian, if you've got a network of recruiters that you recommend either.
No, I wouldn't have, Yanni, but two things I just wanted to add quickly, Dorian, is visa-wise, your situation will be very easy. Second one is that while Dubai used to be an expat, being brought from outside, now there is a real local talent pool in which companies are tapping. So being a talent here, you will find something very, I wouldn't say easily, but you have a lot of opportunities, because companies don't always look at outside the country, but they look inside the country now through the companies Yoni is mentioning. It's very important. And as well, despite the culture of the country being more patriarchal in the past, now it's quite common as well to have a lot of the spouse following being the man as well. So this is not it used to be a bit cultural matter here in the past, but not at all anymore. So your situation is quite common, and I'm sure you'll find something easily.
Mike, I sent you my email as well. Well, with that, we're reaching the end of their allotted time. I want to thank everybody so much for their participation. Dr. Saima, you really are an inspiration, what you're doing with the schools. It's incredible. I hope if we move there, although I am a resident of Dubai and in Abu Dhabi. But if we end up sending our kids to school there, I'd love to meet you anyways in person. I'd love to send the kids to your institution. Seems quite
He's very
remarkable.
welcome. Very welcome to you.
Sebastien, there are many Israeli companies that are considering moving. We'll also obviously put you in touch with those that approach us for corporate relocation. Ayelet, thank you very, very much. You've shared your contact details. If anybody wants to read about the challenges of relocation in advance, Relocation, Darling, Relocation. I know it's
You have
pending.
it all there. I'm telling you, I didn't skip even one topic.
I'm sure it's all there. And Yoni, really, the most welcoming face in Dubai for your typical Israeli or your typical Israeli, Australian, Brazilian who arrives. Thank you very much. And Chag Sameach, it's a Jewish holiday this evening for him.
Thank you.
And I hope you all have a nice evening and celebrate if you're going to celebrate. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.